I'll start it up now, because what I'm going to do is we're going to have all this recorded anyway. So Rianka is reorganized all this. She's going to record this session, so everyone can have a link to it and actually watch it at their leisure. So I'll kick off now, and so we can kick on with it. I've also got, besides myself, most of you know me, Niall Mackey, the commercial director. I've got Gavin, our CTO.
Hi, everyone.
And we've got Stuart from Expert DPO as well. So he's going to bring us some interesting insights as well from his view of the world, which I thought would be useful. Say hello, Stuart.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, very good. So, okay, let's kick on. And I thought this would be interesting because we haven't done one of these before. And actually, I was asking the guys, people would be interested in understanding what we've seen. Obviously, you're reading reports all the time from Gartner and all these other people of what they've seen, but that's usually very America-focused or other markets. It's not really focused on the UK and Ireland so much. So I thought I'd ask the guys. So Gavin and his team and their operations people have actually put together some stats themselves and what they saw as being the key things that happened in 2023 and stuff that they see as being threats and potential or real threats in the coming year as well, which I think is interesting. Then I'm actually going to do a bit of a recap of what other people are saying. So, and to be honest, they're actually quite similar. So it was actually strange. I think nearly every point that Gavin and his team brought to me, we actually saw in the other literature out there. So it's not just an Irish market or a UK market specific trends. These trends seem to be global as well. And we also want to look at how this is going to shape email security, because I mean, this is what we care about. Our world revolves around email security, and that's all we kind of care about. So we leave all the other stuff to other people. And so we're just going to give our view on what's going to happen there and how we think we can help with some new things that have been brought to the market by our team, and even just advice we can give to help people improve their security posture in the coming year. And then we'll finish up with as many questions as you want. You can also use the chat. Rianka is going to be monitoring the chat, so she's going to be making note of any questions, and then we can go through them at the end. But also you can put your hand up at the end as well, and we're going to unmute everybody at the end so you can actually chat away. So the first ones, I'm going to get Gavin to go through these because these are what he saw and his team saw this year.
Thanks. Yeah. So what we've seen, especially in the kind of run up to Christmas last year as well, was pretty much three specific tactics that are definitely on the rise. The first one is malicious QR codes. The QR codes are delivered into the mail. Maybe they contain a link to a specific destination, and when they arrive within the mailbox, they're clean and the link is safe. There's no issue. What we've then seen is at a later time, maybe an hour or a day after, the QR code is triggered and then becomes dangerous. As well, then we've seen a large rise in a similar tactic in OneDrive. OneDrive URLs are sent to an individual. Everything within the URL is safe. The reputation to Windows is trusted. No issue seen when the mail arrives, but then an hour or a day later, what is actually in the OneDrive is changed by a bad actor and it then becomes dangerous. The last one here is the same tactic again, but it's done with the URLs. The URL is sent through our system. Maybe the top level domain is scanned, everything is fine, there's no problems. It's delivered in, and then an hour or a day or 2 days or 5 days later, the redirect changes or the top level domain content changes and it becomes dangerous. So these three kind of tactics are where we've seen most rise last year, but they're also an indication that the bad actors involved are struggling to get things through gateways. So their next kind of, I suppose, evolution to try to get by it is to put something in there that's safe and then change it after the fact.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the biggest rise we've seen.
And thanks for that. And the last one came from our operations department, the targeted whaling and spear phishing attacks. They're seeing much more sophisticated. Again, probably because of the reasons Gavin said, that the drive-by ones aren't working. The kind of the easy, the low-hanging fruit is no longer hanging; it's gone, and they're actually having to be a bit more targeted in how they actually do things, and also more sophisticated. And we'll go into that a bit later as to how they're doing that. And this is an example from Gavin about these OneDrive threats.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example, and really with this example, you can replace OneDrive with QR code or URL. It's exactly the same tactic. So in this example, OneDrive URL arrives within the mailbox. It is processed through our gateway. The filtering scans are all good. The Microsoft reputation is clean. There's no content in there that's malicious, and it passes all checks. It's then put into the user's mailbox. It sits there. After the fact, maybe an hour, 2 hours later, what is in the OneDrive changes, and it becomes a bad email that's effectively sitting in the mailbox, waiting to be clicked.
Yeah, very good. And then we're seeing a lot of kind of interesting behavior leading to helping people be compromised. Like a lot of organizations aren't helping themselves. So we've been, as you probably know, and I think most of you guys on this call are on the journey to be DMARC compliant, or have actually completed the journey. But you're in the minority. I mean, only 26% of organizations have actually got a proper SPF, DKIM, and DMARC configuration. So what that's doing is it's making it very easy for spear phishing, kind of whaling type approaches into the organization. It's also leaving you wide open for like domain spoofing, which means people can impersonate your domain to your customers or to other people because you'd be a trusted domain. And it's not rocket science to get this sorted. Or if and even if you think it is, you can come and talk to someone like ourselves to actually do it for you within a few months, and you become compliant. But it's still, and even with the Google and Yahoo announcements there recently, like, their deadlines are coming up in February and March. It was February actually, and then there's the PCI deadline in March. And even with those, so many organizations, when I'm talking to them, going, I didn't know about that, or God, that's new to me. I didn't realize. I thought if I had a decent SPF record, I'd be fine. And that would have been fine maybe 2 years ago, but that's not the case anymore. And this is what I'm hearing an awful lot at the back end of last year and the start of this year, is people getting really hot under the collar about the effectiveness of their security awareness training. And it doesn't, and the stats will bear it out, it doesn't seem to be working, even though we can't believe people would click on links and do this. People are continuing to do it. And no matter how much, or maybe it's the manner it's being delivered, or the regularity or the actual thought that's going into it, maybe that's not correct. But phishing awareness training and security awareness training in general isn't working to the level it should be for the amount of effort being put into it. We also saw an interesting one where, again, this comes back to who people are targeting. They're targeting a lot of IT people because you've got admin access, people like yourselves, and you're becoming you're much more interesting to be targeted than someone like me who's in business development or sales or marketing and stuff like that, because I don't have access to limited drives and stuff, whereas a good IT person, senior IT person, probably has admin access to all the key drives and information in the organization. So they're being targeted, and these people are maybe don't realize that they're as big a target as they actually are, and maybe aren't. They might be telling other people to do all this stuff, but it's like the carpenter or the tradesman at home. His house is falling apart. Well, he's telling everybody else and doing a great job with his customers. We're also seeing, again, leading back to maybe something Gavin alluded to, is supply chain compromise, because again, organizations are getting better. The people like yourselves are getting better at closing a lot of the doors, the obvious stuff to get in. But if you've got, and everyone has suppliers, everyone has customers. So, if one of those that you trust has become compromised, and the bad actors know that they're a main or trusted supplier or customer of yours, that's a new mechanism we're seeing a lot more of, and that's going back to the stuff I said earlier about the spear phishing and the whaling, because again, they're getting in the back door, they're getting more information. Again, this is something that the ops team have seen a bit of, and it's something people are not really monitoring for. And working from home is that we're starting to see some stats now that, not consciously maybe, but people aren't adhering to the same rigor in the way they look after their data. They're also, maybe not everyone's using secure VPNs and using, secure networks and using MFA and doing all these things, or if maybe they don't always switch them on, or they're working from cafes and using public Wi-Fi and stuff. And and we've seen a lot of issues come out of this now, this hybrid working from home combination. And I think there's probably a lot more coming out on this in the next few years as to how it's affecting data security. And then to you guys, we're seeing a lot of burnout in the cybersecurity space, as in the people doing the work like you guys, because you have alerts popping out of everywhere. You have this console, that console, that's telling you this, and you're almost going blind to all these alerts and everything else. And that's actually leading to compromise as well, because stuff that you would normally have picked up on, you're not, because you're drowned in a sea of alerts and consoles and things you have to monitor, and you only have so much time. And I know most of you out there, and your teams aren't massive, so you're not sitting around having loads of time to look at this stuff. So the bad actors are actually taking advantage of this. And I also thought we'd get someone else from a DPO perspective, because the implications of these compromises have far-reaching effects. And that's why I've invited Stuart from XPO, expert DPO, to come on and talk about his findings and what he saw last year, and things that maybe you guys should be looking out for when it comes to data privacy and GDPR and your DPO activities in the organization. So Stuart, over to you.
Thank you. So thanks for the invite to come on, and really I just want to highlight a handful of trends that we noted throughout the year. The first one really is in relation to security. Lots of people, GDPR became a thing almost 6 years ago now, 5.5 years ago in 2018. And most people did what they felt was necessary at the time, updating policies, updating a website privacy policy, and have largely left it unattended in a lot of cases since then. But what a lot of people don't realize is there is a security element to the GDPR. And there has been an increase in the activity around fines. The majority of fines that have been handed out in Ireland and to a certain extent across Europe have been in relation to non-compliance with Article 32 of the GDPR, which is what is generally termed as the security principle. So that can be anything from a successful phishing attack, where an organization lost access temporarily to an email account via a successful phishing attack, could have been stopped by having multi-factor authentication switched on, to actually leaving data exposed in Microsoft Azure, SharePoint, Amazon Web Services, so on and so forth. And it's really the application of those security principles that make statutory authorities start looking a bit closely at organizations that suffer these types of attacks. So, for example, Article 32, the security principle, states that the data controller, shall implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. So what that means is, if you haven't determined the sensitivity of your data, you don't know what you're processing, you don't know what you're storing, then you haven't studied the risk, you haven't determined how risky this data is. And then that's when the statutory authorities, the DPC, start to look closer, and then things start unraveling. So there is a disconnect. People think, well, I've done my policies and procedures, we're now GDPR compliant, or 90% of the way there, it'll all be okay. What they don't consider is that there is a connect between GDPR and security in terms of protecting the data. In terms of the Data Protection Commissioner's Office, there is an increase in activity. So again, 2018, May 25th, 2018 happened. The sun came up the following day, nothing imploded. And there's a perception that the DPC really just went after the large multinational social media companies and didn't really have much activity going on locally within Ireland. That's changed. There's a lot more activity now. Lots of organizations are being investigated, are being fined. Again, the majority of fines are to do with technical and organizational measures. And I've never been one to sell on fear. I've never used the threat of a fine as a sales driver. But if you consider, some organisations have been fined around €5,000 for lack of technical and organisational measures, lack of security measures, and some organisations have been fined in between 400 and 500,000 for lack of technical organisational measures. That's a lot of money. So the DPC are looking closely. A few years ago, if we had to report a breach on behalf of a client, you would expect a handful of questions back. You might have to provide them with some documentation. But again, now the policies and procedures that you've drafted are being requested. They're being read in detail. Questions are coming back to clients. Tell us about section 2.8 about your password policy. Are you implementing that? What is the minimum requirements for passwords? And again, they're entering into a dialogue. It isn't just report, forget about it now. It's report, expect questions, and expect dialogue. And they actually have a monitoring department now. Some organizations that have to report data breaches, unfortunately, report that, it's investigated, and then you hand it over to the monitoring department that monitor you for a period of time after that to ensure that you're meeting the standards expected. In terms of policies being scrutinized, we've seen in 99% of cases records of processing activity, ROPA, being requested. So you have a breach on your email. They'll say, please provide us with the most up-to-date record of processing activity in relation to this business process. If you haven't defined and maintained and drafted your records of processing activity, you're already on the back foot. And as we all know, data breaches are very stressful, and having to go and start trying to document things whilst you're dealing with a data breach isn't ideal. Records of processing activities, for those people that don't understand what they are, they're best described as a personal information inventory. So it's all of the personal information that you process in any of your business systems, business processes, departments, and so on. So you need a record of that. If you don't have them, that's a major gap. One thing that we still find is that organizations, as I alluded to when I first started, is they're still largely unaware of their obligations. Many people, many organizations, they've written the policies, that's that. They're not aware of their obligations. So we've seen things in the media about organizations in the country removing visitor books because it's a breach of GDPR. That demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the GDPR and what it's about. Again, there's a misconception about GDPR being about privacy. The concepts of privacy and data protection are completely separate. Okay, the GDPR and the Data Protection Act is all about how organizations protect the data that they process. It's not anything to do with privacy and breaching privacy. So there's a big disconnect in what people understand and what is actually the case. And again, when we're working with clients, we never present the GDPR as a blocker to business. In my opinion, it's very much an enabler for business. GDPR shouldn't stop anybody doing anything. It just means that you have to do things in the right way. You have to be transparent about how you do things and make sure that you've got all your documentation and your security processes in place and documented, and being able to demonstrate those. And finally, we're in the age of AI now. So GDPR, Data Protection Act, has provisions for when an organization wants to use novel technologies, novel meaning new technologies. Lots of organizations out there trying to sell AI solutions, but from a GDPR perspective and a soon to be EU AI Act perspective, you have an obligation. As recently as the 9th of January this year, the government announced that they've approved the use of AI across the public sector, but it has to be in line with the principles of the AI Act. So they have ethical guidelines for trusted AI that has been released by the government. There are 7 requirements for ethical AI, and much like you have to do, or you should be doing, data protection impact assessments to determine the risk introduced to a processing activity under GDPR, you're going to have to do those as well as AI impact assessments, so to make sure that you're meeting the standards. And again, security, how you protect data, how you minimize the risks will feed into that.
Interesting. And some people have asked me about DORA, Stuart. Is that something people should be worried about or have to do something about?
DORA is, you're in scope of DORA if you're a financial institution primarily. So it's the digital Digital Operation and Resiliency Act. And if you're an investment firm or a bank or a financial institution, it covers your infrastructure. However, the Act introduces requirements for crypto-like organizations and also non-traditional entities. So if you're a data center provider, for example, and you provide data center services or cloud hosting services to a financial institution, you may well be within the scope of DORA. So there is an implementation period, as there was with GDPR, but again, it's not as widespread as the GDPR. It only applies to certain organizations. So the first step that you need to do is an analysis. If you think that you are within scope of DORA, you need to do an analysis piece to determine whether you're in scope or out of scope.
Great, thanks for that. So now I'm going to just look at some of the things from the information out there on the web. You guys probably have seen this yourself. A lot of it is in line with what we've seen ourselves. They're seeing the impact of remote work on email security, as mentioned earlier. They're also saying, and this is actually from Microsoft's own actual end-of-year report, Microsoft isn't enough for email security. They actually say so. I've got a quote from the guy at the end. That, like, especially with phishing, it's as far as if you work hard enough at it, you will get through, because people are people. Interesting one here, though. This is one like I saw that the bad actors again are actually, because again people are getting better at security, they're actually looking at the dark web for senior people in your organization or people they want to target, like you mentioned in IT and other places, and seeing if they've been compromised with their work credentials on the dark web, and buying them and then using them to actually attack organizations. So it was an interesting one that's actually growing quite a bit. And again, training, as I mentioned, we heard as well from just talking to customers, training needs to be better and measured. That seems to be across the board. There seems to be a real push towards better security awareness training in general to change behavior, because behavior doesn't seem to be changing. People are doing the courses, they're passing the courses, but they're not actually changing behavior as much as they need to. And who are they after? Like, some of these are obvious, but some of them were, one of them was surprising to me, actually. So new staff, obviously, and especially senior new staff. And what they're doing is the bad actors, again, are watching people on LinkedIn, and the new job advert comes up and they've moved from this company to this company, and they target those people because they're probably not up to date with the standards and the way of doing things in that new organization. And they're in play as far as the guys targeting are concerned. Obviously, senior staff, we all know that, your exec team, people who can influence decisions on finance and signing things off. But as mentioned before, you guys are in that hit list, in the top 3, in fact, because again, you have your admin rights and the ability to navigate inside of an organization's systems. If you can compromise you guys, they've got access to pretty much everything. Finance procurement, no big shock there, again, for obvious reasons. But one that was interesting to me was HR is now on the list in the top 5. And apparently, again, it's to do with the data they have access to. They have a lot of data on people. So again, that's of value to these organizations as well. So again, maybe a lot of people are protecting the senior staff and the finance people, but are you doing enough for new staff, yourselves, and the HR staff? Maybe not. So it's maybe something to look at. Interesting as well, just to see what was the most imitated brands in spear phishing type attacks, and it was actually LinkedIn. And by a long way. Second was DHL. Again, not surprised with especially the way the world's gone after COVID. Everyone delivering stuff, and obviously Microsoft themselves. But LinkedIn was a fair bit ahead of the other two. So again, because it's business, I suppose, and people are using it, and people are often likely to engage with these emails. And I've never had so many Asian lovely people kind of wanting to contact me and offer me jobs and offer me business opportunities in the last in the last few months. It's incredible. So I'm very popular, and I'm sure all you guys and girls are popular too. So it's something to watch out for. And then I looked at the Allianz data. I looked at previously we did some. I looked at the Gartner ones. I looked at the Verizon ones. I looked at Allianz had a new one out, the Allianz Risk Barometer, and some of their stats. And they are similar to some of the other ones we've seen. And if you were at our Thomond Park event in Munster, you would have seen some of these stats. But and they're interesting. But what this was a quote from the actual from the report, that they're seeing cyber incidents as more important than, say, climate change, labour shortages, and the possibility of recession as an impact on business. That's how high up now emails, security in general has actually gone in business. It's right at the top table. It's at board level. It's regarded as the most important thing to avoid, because it can take down a whole organisation or seriously embarrass them. There's some other interesting stats. I'll go through these quickly because I'm going to send this out anyway. You're not going to be surprised at the first one. 75% of companies experience an increase in email attacks. Obvious. I didn't understand this one. 66% were in some way harmed by ransomware attack. We just don't see that. So maybe they were talking about that they had ransomware attacks enter their organization and were stopped. That would make more sense, because that would be tallying with what we're seeing. But we see nothing. We wouldn't even see 1% of people actually being compromised by a ransomware attack. Now these were 1,500 of the largest, apparently, organizations in the world. So maybe it's skewed a bit because they have such a big attack surface. Perhaps that's why that number is so high. Obviously, all targeted by phishing attacks. But again, this is down to the training thing, which is I find this very high as well. 70% opened by recipients. At least one person in the organization engaged with the phishing attack. So again, I find that really high. And obviously, we know this stat. This has been out there a while, that 90% of all compromises initiate with an email. I mean, that's why email is such an important thing to get right. I often find it crazy that people spend fortunes on other systems that cover off 10% of the threat, and they leave the front door wide open and expect everything to be fine with just a generic, say, Microsoft setup, and expect there to be no issues. And that's where 90% of the threats are actually going to come through. And again, getting onto Microsoft and Google Workspace, they all believe that, or pretty much all believe that, they need more than the native protections. Even if you're at E5, things like that, it's still not enough. And Gartner will say the same thing. You need layered security. And this was going back to the DMARC stuff as well. I found it hilarious. 91% of them saw domain spoofing going on, and government was the biggest target here and saw the most, and is being targeted the most. But only 27% of them were actually still compliant. I mean, it's nuts. And then going back to the training side of things, 48% said that their own employees were probably the biggest threat to their organization coming in the coming year, because they weren't aware enough of the cyber threats actually happening. So again, very, very common themes to what we saw ourselves. And again, it's quite sad when it actually happens. This was a company in the UK, been going 150 odd years, had a ransomware attack, and now don't exist, are gone. a good old logistics company. The Met Police in the UK got compromised. Imagine the danger of that, and also the PSNI were compromised as well. Again, that data, that can affect people's lives. I mean, from a physical perspective as well. So this information it's so important that people are looking after the data correctly because of the implications. And there were other big ones last year with T-Mobile, ChatGPT, Google, MailChimp, Norton, and there's probably tons of others I've missed off there. But these are happening on a day-to-day basis, and we just have to be aware of them. And there's a lot, because of this, there's a lot of data on us and people out there as well. That's something that we have to be cognizant of as well. Even if you've done nothing wrong, your users may have used their work credentials in some of these other sites and they've been compromised. So again, going back to the business email compromise example, where they're actually harvesting and looking on the dark web for senior key staff in organizations to see what's out there on them. Again, this is where they're getting the information. And so the most important thing, I suppose, from your, as you, most of you are customers of ours, how can we help you? So we have some new stuff like this year, plus stuff we talked about last year as well, that's kind of evolved. So I'm going to let Gavin talk about our relatively new Inbox Protect service as to what that does and how it can help you with these scenarios.
Thank you, Niall.
Yeah.
So last year we introduced Inbox Protect, and we basically built Inbox Protect to allow us to replicate our gateway directly into a Microsoft tenant. By doing this, it introduces a few additional areas of security, but it does replicate our gateway as well. Examples here, so we can now have URL protection real-time and post-delivery for both internal and external mail within a tenant. OneDrive post-delivery mitigation of any risks that arise. I'll explain that in a second with an example as well. Same for QR codes. We can real-time scan for QR codes and follow any links that are within the QR code itself. And then post-delivery, if we find any information about a QR code after the fact, we can act upon it. Because Inbox Protect is directly connected to your tenant, it allows us to effectively then have a cluster that we maintain of all the URLs that are passing through our system. So any mails that go through our gateway or any mails that we see in Inbox Protect, we keep a record of any URLs in those mails, and it allows us to do things with that information. We've also included in this product a search and delete function. That can be useful for a number of reasons. You might want to use it to see have any particular users received a certain email. You can search via attachments, subjects, phrases, and once you've discovered the mails, you can choose to delete them, or delete them, as a kind of delete all from tenant, or you can individually delete them from the accounts. Do you want to pop them?
Yeah.
Thanks, Amin. So we kind of had a quick look earlier at an example of a OneDrive URL coming into an inbox and then becoming dangerous after it had arrived. So in this example here, same thing. It could be OneDrive, it could be a URL, it could be a QR code, and let's say it's been sent to 3 mailboxes within a tenant. After they have arrived, if Inbox Protect receives any intelligence that relates to the URLs within them, it can effectively move those mails and delete them after they've been delivered. To do this, or partially to do this, we've designed something we call the URL analyzer. So our URL analyzer looks at those URLs that we're capturing, and it checks for redirects. It scans up to 10 redirects deep. If any of those redirects have a bad reputation, Inbox Protect will act upon the mail and delete the mail. If the top level domain has any reputational issues, or when we're scanning the content on that page, if there's any issues there, it will go and it will delete the mail. As well as that, we've got multiple streams of threat intelligence that we use. Some is our own, some is third party, and we have also got our support guys here who on a daily basis, they're talking to customers and they might receive something. So it could be that a customer has received a mail or a number of mails that they know lead to a OneDrive folder that has become dangerous, and they can either call our support, tell them this one here, we know it's become dangerous, in which case we can input that into Inbox Protect and just wipe it from the tenant. Equally, an admin can log into our portal and do the same thing themselves. So it adds a lot of power to our stacks that can't be used with our gateway, and it's made a big difference, and it's definitely something that is related specifically to these three problems that we're seeing rising. It mitigates that issue a lot. And also, so there's some other benefits to Inbox Protect, not just the retrospective side. In real time, it will scan internal and external mail. It will perform attachment sandboxing exactly the same way the gateway does. AV scanning. It will rewrite URLs, both internal and external. Current gateway customer would only be having URLs rewritten for external traffic. As I mentioned, there's redirect scanning, and rules and policies that you have possibly on our gateway can be replicated and then tweaked to function internally. What we've found is internally there may be different rules as to how big video files should be capped at when they're coming in, as opposed to external. There might be different rules around macros or audio files, that kind of thing. So we can have two separate rules, one for your external gateway traffic and one for your internal Inbox Protect. Setup is really, really simple. Because this operates with Microsoft Graph, all that's required is a tenant ID from you to us. We input that into your account, and then an authorization by an admin. So there's no MX records changes. It's very, very quick. In theory, it can be set up in 5 minutes. It needs to be, and it's very, very easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what we've done over the last year, really largely with the URL analysis, has really paid off in terms of this problem that we've seen rising.
Yeah.
There's a bit of foresight there, a bit of coincidence there. It came together, and it's
good time.
Exactly what's needed.
Yeah, very good, excellent. And obviously, like I said, most of you guys, thank God, are on the road to having your DMARC, become compliant for the obvious reasons we talked about earlier. Deliverability is a big one, as well, especially with the Google and Yahoo and PCI announcements like that are going to come into effect in February and March. You guys will all be fine for that. And we're hearing Microsoft maybe doing something in the next 6 to 9 months on this as well, which will cause chaos because everyone will have to be compliant then. It gives you visibility of shadow IT, which is useful for you guys as well. For people who are already doing it, there's one new thing actually. Obviously, some of you are now looking at doing the BIMI, which is interesting, especially if you do a lot of outbound and if you do some B2C stuff, it's probably really useful to have your brand logo beside the email. But also, if you're doing a lot of outbound emails as well, we've now got a new bit of functionality that you wouldn't have heard about called Easy Sender. And really, in essence, it's quite simple. What it does is it stops you having bounces. And what it does is it actually looks at the list that you have that you're going to send out and actually validates that. It does other things as well, but that's the main thing I can see really benefit. It actually validates that list. So you never send to somebody who can't receive it. And so you're not getting bounces and rejects and all that kind of stuff. So it's not making you look bad, from your bounce rate and stuff like that. So if nothing else, that's worth having a look at if you do a lot of outbound mail and want to do it correctly. Obviously cyber insurance we talked about before. We talked about Google. Most of you people should know about this by now. Google, Yahoo, the PCI stuff in March. So it's like if you're not doing it, you have to do it. And then it just makes sense. And if you need some help with it, talk to us. But you can actually do it yourself. But you just need a bit of domain knowledge. Forgive the pun. But and just a bit of patience. And you'll get through it yourself. The other thing which has been coming up, I say a lot, is training. Now we obviously do this and we bespoke it, and we're getting a lot more people coming to us to do that because, security awareness training isn't hard to do. Like you buy a tool, you get a download a template and you fire it out to people. But but it's time consuming, and to do it right and to actually get the value out of it, and not just doing it for a cyber insurance tick box to say I've done an attack every year, whatever, but to actually try and drive behavior. That's where it needs thought and everything else. And that's where I suppose maybe where we come in, and we can actually help bring that and our knowledge of what we're doing for other people, and how it's done, and doing training at the point of compromise, also auto-enrolling into relevant other courses if they do happen to click on a link or try to give us credentials, etc. So it's a joined up thinking. It's not just a one-off kind of approach, and I think that's probably going to help in actually driving up that behavioural change when you do that point of compromise type training. And then if you want to go a bit further, which I think is the way to go for, especially for larger organizations, is the nudge-based training, which basically you do actually have to have an agent. Like normally everything we do requires nothing on the endpoint at all, but this one does, and it actually monitors behavior of what people are actually doing. So say they want to send out like an attachment to a Gmail account, it will pop up, and that's against your policy. It will pop up like an alert saying, are you sure you want to do this? It won't stop them, but it will alert them to say, you sure you want to do this? This is against policy, and this is why it's probably not a good idea. Or even things like nothing to do with email, but like say, downloading sensitive documents to your desktop or to your download document, or send it to your own Gmail account, popping it up and actually alerting you to say, are you sure that this document should be saved on OneDrive according to company policy? This is why this is probably not a good idea. And you obviously don't have nudges popping up all the time. You limit it maybe 3 a day to a person, but every time they've actually tried to do it again after, just because it doesn't pop up an actual nudge, the behavior. So you get to understand how people are actually using the system. So you can, as Stuart was talking about, driving behavior and awareness of what people are doing in the organization compliance-wise, you can actually drive that through this kind of approach. And this kind of approach will change behavior eventually, because if you're constantly reminding people as they're actually doing something, it actually will have an effect. So again, if you want to talk about that at a later date, you know who we are and where we are. And because it's all about changing behavior. If you change behavior, you change the risk profile. So that's something that's very hot. And getting back to this is something that happened during COVID, and we're seeing it. It's interesting to see from that Allianz stuff that the business email compromise stuff is becoming so key now, because they're actually like using the information that's on the dark web, where your staff have gone away and actually used their work credentials in a non-work related site like Netflix or LinkedIn or Booking.com or whatever. And then they've been compromised because they're huge targets for the hackers. No matter how good their security, they're always being hacked and data exfiltrated. And that's then available on the dark web. And if people are actually looking to your organization, they'll do a search on that name and email address, and suddenly they'll come up, and then they'll suddenly have credentials information. If it's a social networking, they'll have some context as well of what the person is doing and what they like or they dislike. Maybe even how they even phrase things. So it gives them a much better chance of actually being successful with a spear phishing, whaling type attack than if they don't have that information. And again, we can actually provide this to you, all the historical breaches plus monitoring in real time to give you as they happen, real time notifications of people being compromised. So, and this also helps with the supply chain stuff we were talking about earlier, because again, we'll allow you to, now you can't see the granular detail for individuals, but you can see if an organization that you work with or supply to or as a customer of, have they been compromised? So again, you can be prepared to have that visibility to know that, okay, well, like our accountancy firm that we do this with, or our print supplier, they've had an issue, and if you have a good relationship with them, you could actually reach out to them and say, listen, is anybody who's been compromised, or are they somebody who deals with us? Or else you could tell people internally in your own organization, look, just be extra careful of any emails coming from these guys, because they've had a data issue, a breach of some sort. So it gives you that visibility outside your own network. And this was one of the quotes I saw that from the Microsoft report there the other day, and it was actually quite kind of reaffirming to see like some practical stuff. Like, you can have all the wonderful software in the world, like, but to compromise email, you just need good credential phishing, social engineering, and sheer grit. So that's where, having those layers of security, having the training in place to actually help you to help you stop this actually happen. I mean, it's not all about systems, it's about training as well, and getting people to understand like the implications of what they're doing. And like all that stuff, I didn't mean to, again, to scare you, but that's why you have someone like us, and most of you work with us, and that's why we do that for you. And I suppose that my last takeaway is like, everyone should just take a breath, and even tell your staff to take a breath and actually just slow down. They're taking advantage of us all being so busy. And I'm just saying, we're all busy. We're all going from meeting to meeting to meeting, emails on the phone when you're having lunch, and that's why they're having success. They bank on us actually being busy and going against our natural intuition to actually say, actually something dodgy about that. Or maybe afterwards you got this night when it's too late, you got this thing in the, alert going in the back of your head, this like itchy feeling going, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have clicked on that link, or I shouldn't have responded to that email, or whatever. So just, if nothing else with your staff, just like tell them to take a beat and to relax a bit and just slow down a little bit. So that's all we have to say today. We're going to open up for questions in a second. I just thought I'd highlight the fact we're actually going to do a face-to-face where you can meet all the team, Gavin and all the guys. We're going to have all the systems up and running at Teelings in February. So the Teelings Distillery, it's a fantastic venue. We're going to have a tour of the place as well. It's right by the Guinness storehouse there. So it's easy to get to and parking, everything. So it's very accessible. We also have, a lot of you would probably know, Bill McCluggage actually speaking. And he was the government CTO for the UK and CIO for Ireland for a while, for the Irish government. And what he doesn't know about where the market's going security-wise, especially all of you kind of public sector related organisations, but he also works in the private sector as well. He's going to be speaking about generative AI and its impact on security and the future. So I think if nothing alone, like that, it's worth coming to see him talk and chat with him afterwards. He's going to hang around for lunch. And like I said, you can meet Gavin and his team, and meet the support guys if you've never met them, like Liam and his team, and obviously myself and my team as well. So it's just and other customers. We're going to have quite a few people there. So it's nice to mix and discuss issues and chat and have an informal way of actually connecting. So hopefully some of you can make it. And now, Rianka, I think you're going to open it up to everyone to be able to access the chat. If anyone wants to say anything, just go back to Teams. Right. Wow, a lot of people. But don't be shy. Often when there's a lot of people on a call, people are afraid to say anything. So someone be brave and ask a question. Or make a comment, or go on, Tony. Yeah, is Tony unmuted? Yeah. Go ahead, Tony. Yeah. Put a comment in.
Can you unmute him then?
Okay. I thought they should all be unmuted. Rianka, is everyone up?
Yeah, no, I'm unmuted now. There, I just figured it out. Technology. Just the Inbox Protect offering. Does that have any Outlook integrations? Microsoft at the minute have their own button that you can kind of register a spam or a phishing mail or whatever. Does the Inbox Protect have anything similar to filter back to you guys?
We do have an Outlook integrated button that can display in the top menu of Outlook. It's not specifically Inbox Protect, but Inbox Protect will react to it being used.
Yeah. You can use it with the Gateway product as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that'd be useful. Like, the stuff goes out to Microsoft, and that's well and good. But if it's not being captured at a local or maybe a company-specific level, it's probably more useful at that level.
And we've also got a way, the way on the training, we can also have that button to report into the phishing awareness training as well. We can do that as well. So people like when you're doing the say the phishing attacks, and someone can actually use that button now, and it doesn't go to Microsoft, or it can go to both Microsoft and us. So we can actually tailor that button now to actually send us that feedback. So someone's been smart, and they've got the spirit, and because they would be lost previously in the stats, and now you can capture them if they did notice that they deserve a few gold star, you know.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Yes, Simon.
Hey, Niall. We use something called KnowBefore for security awareness training for most of our clients, and that has a fish alert button.
Yeah.
So we already have a button, and that feeds directly into KnowBefore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does that mean that this wouldn't really work for us?
No, you can have. So if you talk about the security awareness training, then no, you would. There's no point. You wouldn't be using two products. You wouldn't use us and KnowBefore for security awareness training. But for email security, you could have a separate button. Yeah.
There's no way we could integrate it so that the same button does both. That would be a KnowBefore question, wouldn't it? Really, rather than a.
But that'd be KnowBefore. Yeah, we can do it with Microsoft for our own awareness training, but we don't do it with KnowBefore now.
No. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No worries. Thanks for the question. And did any of those findings surprise you, or was did it reaffirm what you thought? And because I thought it was quite interesting that most of the local stuff that the guys had found was actually the same, you know, across the world, basically, you know. Or is there anything maybe we've missed off that you guys have seen personally in your own organizations that we haven't mentioned here? Okay, Tony's back up again. Yeah.
No, I think the rise in QR stuff is specifically we saw a huge increase in ourselves in pre-Christmas. You even see it now around the city in the parking bays and stuff like that, where they're now masking the legitimate QR code with fraudulent ones. Like it's definitely a risky business. All right, yeah,
absolutely, yeah. There was huge scams in parking lots, wasn't there? Especially in the UK.
Yeah.
It is something that we're, you know, outside of Infrastructure Protect, just generally heavily focused on, and we are about to update where we can actually look at QR codes within attachments. So, making steps there.
Yeah, very good. Anyone else? Like, it's just a nice formula. Oh, here we go, Melissa. Yeah, good to hear from you.
Hi guys. Just a very practical question. What's the pricing model for Inbox Protect? Is it kind of subscription based? Is it based on your number of mailboxes, number of users, or
number of users? Again, same as the gateway service. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number of zero users, or number of mailboxes?
Mailboxes. Yeah, mailboxes.
Mailboxes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Grant. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything interesting to add, or something like I say we've missed, or comments on anything that we've talked about? Stuart, you've been in this industry a long time. Have you got anything maybe on the GPO side of things to say to people as well?
Yeah, just again, make sure that it's an ever moving cycle. So, you know, make sure that you're regularly reviewing your documentation. Make sure that your data protection framework is aligned with your information security framework and policies. Again, it's the human side of things. So email will always be the biggest threat vector. And again, just to underline what you said there, we're all busy. We all click on things. We all send a response. And again, you just need to take a breath. You know, we're all used to working remotely now after being through the last 4.5 years of what we've been through. So again, you know, trust your gut. If you think something might not be a genuine link or a genuine mail, pick up the phone, speak to that person. Is the email from someone, you know, it appears to be someone in your organization, but does it use the language they would normally use?
Yeah.
Does it feel like the language they would use? Does it use the same kind of phrasing that they would use? Does it have any spelling errors?
Yeah.
These are all clues. And if your gut feels just off, don't click anything, pick the phone up, just say, hey, did you just send me that email? What's this about that invoice?
And I think the working from home has impacted this. Again, that's one of the impacts, because again, you're not like in the office, you just go, did you get that email? You know, that looked dodgy to you, you know, like it, and like that informal kind of checking, you know, yeah, I didn't touch it, or yeah, you know, and you know, whereas now you have to physically send an email to someone or ring them, or you know, and it's a barrier, and you know, it's a barrier to actually that informality.
Yeah, and that's kind of, that's a really good point, because you know, lots of people have this fear that, oh, I can't phone that guy, he's much busier than I am, or he's the CEO, or he's the whatever. They'll thank you more for picking the phone up or just checking than they will if there's a bit of an incident, you know. So it's no one's going to ever crucify anyone for just making sure, you know, because we're all human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see some people are shooting off now, and that, thanks very much. One thing I thought I should have mentioned as well, on the Inbox Protect, we're actually doing a free trial of that. So it gives you a free audit in some respects. So you can actually stick it on for a month, and you know, like it takes no time to set up, and like 5-6 minutes. It's actually pretty existing.
It's worth saying as well, you know, we mentioned it, how easy it is to set up early.
Yeah.
But it's equally as easy to turn it
Turn it off.
if they want to.
Exactly. Exactly. It's authorizing and deauthorizing. It's on the tenant ID. And it's worth actually seeing, you know, what it's finding. If it's finding nothing of value, then that's great. Everything's hunky dory. But if it is finding something, well, then you have a solution. You know, so it's a good way of evaluating everything. You know, and Rianka's put I think you all have my email address anyway, but she's put it in there anyway to the chat if you needed to contact me about any of this stuff. So listen, unless anybody else has anything else to say, I might just call it now, because I can see we've kind of run over time, but that's fine. I'm glad hope you got some value out of it. Thanks very much, Stuart, for your input. It was very valuable. And thanks, Jennifer. And Gavin, the same. Your input is very interesting to hear from the technical side of things as well, rather than some marketing and sales rubbish. So good luck with everyone, and good luck with the year. And hopefully some of you can make it to the Teamings event. So see you then. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stuart.